What I'm going to do here is try to measure this little arrangement of objects live, as it were. I'm holding the camera with one hand, so it's going to be a little bit shaky, but hopefully it gets the idea across of how you actually do this. So you can see my hand coming into shot now. My arm is locked out at arm's length. That's crucial to this exercise. If you keep moving it, you can see there, if 1 minute it's out at arm's length, and then if I bring it in the next time a little bit less, then you can see, look how the pencil, or rather the brush, is becoming bigger and smaller. So therefore it's going to give us artificial measurements. So to keep it consistent, we must always lock out our arm on arm's length, okay? So for example, if I was to take the overall height or width rather, from the very edge of the pot, the handle of the pot, right across to the very edge of the cardboard box. Okay, so if I measure that by lining up arm's length, I'm going to line up the point of this brush with the edge of that cardboard box, you can see there. And I'm then going to slide my thumb here along until it marks the edge, the outside edge of that little handle there, the furthest most point of either side. So I've got a measurement of the total distance of the two objects from the widest outside there to the widest outside here. So I've got that. You can see that when I put my hand back. If I keep my hand there, with my thumb rather, don't move it. I can move my arm around, whatever, but don't move your thumb. You have that distance. Then again at arm's length, keep it arm's length, turn this. And now let's compare the measurement to the height. So if I now come down, say to the bottom of the pot here, and bring my thumb to that, you can see there's one measurement. And you notice, by the way, it's just very convenient that it's exactly the height of the pot. You see that? So we know something now, that that distance is the same as the height of the pot. So that's a useful thing to know. Anyway, we've got one measurement, then we go up to the next. So we start from where we end it, in other words, the top of that little lid there. So we go one, move it up, and now my thumb comes to that point at the top of the lid. And we can then decide, look at the top of that box, look at the top of the cardboard box, the blue, dark blue bit, the very, very, very top. How far up this measurement, how far up with the paintbrush is that coming? It's about halfway, isn't it? If you look at that, it's near enough halfway. So in other words, what we know now is that or rather the height is 1.5 times of that. So we know that contained in the very outer perimeter of this arrangement here, it is 1.5 times by 1. In other words, that is one measurement. Do it again there. Swing that round 1 time and 1.5 times. So we can now fit our arrangement into a box which is 1.5 times as big as it is wide. Okay, so if you're using an easel, which I would recommend, upright easel, I'm just going to explain this business of rotation. If you're standing in an easel or sitting at an upright easel, not flat, what you're going to do is, if you're looking at a subject like a still life or a figure in front of you, you're going to put your pencil or brush or whatever that you're going to use to measure with right at arm's length. So that's just that reminder. Again, you can see hopefully my arm is as far out as I can get it, okay? It's not here, it's not there, it's right there, okay? Then what you're going to do when you're looking at the angles between one point and another, with one eye closed, look as if you're looking through sights of a gun, and you line it up with, let's say, the vertical of a box or whatever, and then rotate, turn your hand. You can see my hand turning until you think that's the angle between that point and that point, or rotate it that way, that's the angle between that point and that point. And because your arm is at arm's length, it can't really change. The only time it'll change is if you consciously do that. But if you don't consciously do that, your shoulder can't rotate. You can't rotate your shoulder. Well, difficult to do. So I could go round and round like that. Watch that pencil. That pencil is not moving an angle. See that? staying exactly where I want it to be. So once I see the angle I want, I then just simply move my arm across my body and run across to my drawing, and then either with another pencil or whatever way you want, make a couple of marks and then say there is the angle that I saw over here. So if you're using or working from a photograph or an illustration and you're working flat, maybe even with watercolors or something where it's harder to work upright. The principle is the same, and in some ways it might even be easier because this is on the ground here. I'm working flat on the floor, but the thing is with my pencil, in a sense, you can physically touch the paper, your illustration. So I can, for instance, say, what's the relationship between that point and say the wee person here? Where is that person in relation to the corner of the house or the building? So you can literally put your pencil along that, hold it onto the page, onto the photograph itself. Apologies, I'm shaking a bit, but holding this with one hand. But so, and then in that case, just simply move your hand across onto your canvas and then say, okay, there's my angle there, and draw that line. I can't maybe more carefully than me, but you can see, well, I know that is the angle between that point and that point, and then I can take if between another point, and I will find where that little figure is based on the what I've shown you just earlier in this video. So hopefully the secret really is at joining the points. If you know any 2 points and you can cross them there, you can find where something else is. Okay, so what we want to see here is just get an idea of what you should be seeing when you actually do that business of putting your arm out at arm's length, holding your pencil, and then turning it to the angle that you're looking for. So here's another little example here. Couple of objects on a table, all right. So if we wanted to say find the connection between the that top point here, that top corner of that box, and the top corner of that lid, and the top right hand corner of that box, and the top corner of that lid. What you should be looking at and seeing is this. So as you look with one eye closed, you will, and your arm at arm's length, your pencil should look like that. So you should hold your pencil up as steady as you can to that corner of that box and rotate your wrist until that pencil cuts through the top corner of the pot. Okay. You will then move your hand across and transfer that angle onto your canvas or your paper or whatever, and then come back and take the second measurement, second reading from that corner, the right hand corner, top corner of that bit of the box, and rotate your hand until it's at that angle. The pencil is at that angle, and the pencil again cuts through just this point right here. So both of those uh, lines, so there's the first one again from there, and the second one from there, and where they intersect will be hopefully the point that represents the top of your pot. And then you simply repeat that exercise. You can use the same points each time. If you know you're happy with the size of that box that you've got, you can then go ahead and use those 2 points to connect with that point and that point of the spout and the point down here at the bottom and so on. And suddenly you have little points that you can join together. Okay, so that's the principle, and that's what you should be looking at when you look through your own viewfinder, as it were. When you view the thing, that's the scene that you should be seeing. Okay. Okay, so having gauged where we think the overall frame is, in other words, having measured the fact that we think that the height of this entire arrangement here is 1.5 times the width. Okay, so you can then go to your page. Let's say this is your page that you're drawing on right here, the frame on our right. The outside line is the page itself. And then you might say, okay, well, I want a certain amount of background. You can decide how much of that border is background. But within that, then you will draw a frame the same proportions as the frame around the arrangement. In other words, 3 times by 2, or in other words, 1.5 times as high as it is wide. And it's worth taking a little bit of time to do this out. It just needs to be a light line. It doesn't need to be super sort of scientific, but you now have something to work within. The other thing you can do at this point is you might say, okay, and I'm just going to grab a little pencil here, or just something to draw with. Okay, so beg your pardon. So what I'm going to do here is bring this over, and I'm going to imagine, you see the little marks I'm making, just say, well, okay, I think, I'm marking around the halfway point across that line, and I'll find the halfway point here. I'm doing this by eyeballing, so it may not be absolutely perfect, but I'm just trying to give you some idea of the objective here. So you can do that on your page. That means then you have a reference point. You might say, well, when you hold your pencil up and look along, or your stick or whatever, and look along that, you can say, okay, I can judge about where the halfway mark is, where the halfway mark down here is. So that means it's easier to plot things. So for example, if I say, okay, I would like to find the width of this box here, this blue bit, how wide is that box? Okay. Let's imagine I put a little line there to represent about halfway. So if I hold my pencil up, I'll run my eye along that until I see, well, there's about halfway. It's somewhere between a quarter and halfway, that edge there. Okay, so imagine that was a quarter mark, but there. So it's about, somewhere halfway between quarter and a half. So if I come to this drawing, then the drawing itself, the page, come from the very corner. We say there's a quarter. It's somewhere between the quarter and the half. We'll say there, and we'll make a little mark, and we'll say let's commit to that for the moment. It's inevitable that none of these will be 100% accurate, but you certainly will be getting close, much closer than you would if you were just guessing as you go. So having established with the width of that, we know the box is the same width all the way down. I apologize that this photograph is tilted very, very slightly, but we'll assume that it's vertical for the sake of this exercise. Okay, so what we do then, if I was to draw a line here and say, okay, there is the edge of that box. So I draw that onto my drawing with my pencil or charcoal. So that's that. We'll say we're happy enough for that. What we don't know now is the bottom of the box. Where is the bottom of the box? Because it's not at the very, very bottom. It's not in line with the teapot. So it's up a little bit. So again, we could make the same sort of judgments. In other words, if I go back and do the same sort of little thing as we were doing before, only this time I'll put little marks on my thing there, about halfway there, and so on. We want to find out how far up do we come here. So again, we can hold up our pencil, follow our eye, and say, well, it's not halfway, obviously, it's way down here. That's about a quarter there. Let's say we mark a quarter, sort of thing about here. Again, it's somewhere between the bottom and the quarter mark. So let's say there's about a quarter there. It's somewhere between that bottom and there. So say we'll go for about the halfway mark, and we'll draw a little indicator there. I know it's a curved line, so we know that, but that is going to disappear, remember, behind the pot eventually, because that is not, the pot covers part of that. So we're going to look at that in a second, but we know the bottom and the top of that. Now we could look at it's just a guide, because where the blue lid ends, where is that? Well, there's our halfway line there. We judge, well, okay, it's, again, the quarter's about there. It's closer to the quarter is just less than the quarter of the way down. So we'll say we think it's about a quarter there. It's a wee bit less than that. We can do that, so we can draw that. And now we kind of, excuse my squiggly drawing, but it's digital. But there is our little lid part there. Okay, and that's the rest of our cardboard box there, which is to say going to be covered by the pot later on. But we now have one object placed in our drawing. Okay, we now have one object on our page, and what I want to do now is get you to think about triangulation. Now it sounds all very complicated, but it's not particularly. But we can keep measuring the rest of this the same way. We can keep on saying, well, where is this point? This point here at the edge of the pot, the lid of the pot, where is that? And we do the same thing. We go along, we go, well, it's somewhere between the halfway, maybe in the quarter. So, it's about there. We plot that and then we say, well, how far down does it come? In other words, we're plotting the points, the distance down and the distance across, like we did here, until we find where we are. Another way that you can do this, and another way you can use to double check that. In other words, there's two ways to cross check and see if you're getting in the right area or not. Is triangulation. So in other words, we know the top corner there of our little box, and we know the top corner there of our little box. Those 2 points we know. So if we know 2 points, we can then calculate it another way. So what I'm going to show you is how you can do that. And what you're doing is rotating your hand, your pencil in your hand, and we'll talk about that shortly. But let's say, for example, I look at this and think, okay, I know this point, and I look at my still life and I rotate my pencil. In other words, if you imagine, I'm just going to draw a line here from there to the edge of that pot, the top of the pot there. So in other words, imagine that black line's my pencil. I'm going to turn my arm's length, remember, rotate my hand round until it's that angle. And then keeping it at that angle, you just move your arm across to your drawing. This is why ideally your drawing should be upright. It's very difficult. It's quite difficult to do this when you're working flat on a table. If you have your drawing on an easel facing you, then all you need to do is move your arm across with the pencil in it and bring it across to there. Okay. Now, the thing is, all we're worried about is the angle here, not the distance. It doesn't matter. So your pencil might be longer. You see what I've just done there. As long as it cuts through that corner there, that little corner, then we bring that across and say, okay, that is where we believe it to be. And we draw a line there. So you can use it freehand or hold a wee ruler up or whatever, and you draw a line right there. And then you can come back and do the same thing from a different point, a second point. So in other words, let's take this point in the corner. So we'll take that point, rotate your pencil until it also intersects that point at the edge of your pot lid. Move your arm across and bring it to your drawing. And you can see a point now, I'll just bring that up a little bit, where those two intersect. So in other words, that point, as far as I can see, is where that is. That's the corner of my pot lid there. So let's say what I'll do is I'll just take a little pencil here and kind of draw a point there. Okay. So there's the point, that little blue point. There's where I think that corner is. Now what I can do is do the same thing again for the other side. So in other words, I can then just make these lines a little bit thinner actually as well at some point. But this time I want to find this point, the other side of the pot lid. Where is it? Well, I'll use the same 2 points of reference, these two things here. I'll take that point, look at the angle. Sorry, we'll go there, yeah. Look at the angle of that, rotate my pencil to that angle in my hand, bring it across and bring it over there. and draw a line. As I say, what I'll do is I'll make that line a little bit thinner. You can see it there, just so it's not as dominant on us. And say, right, okay, we know it's somewhere along that line. We don't know where yet, but we find it by doing the same thing again, only this time we're taking the second point of reference and we rotate our pencil to that angle and holding it at that angle, just move our arm across and bring it up to the corner of our drawing. And there we have two intersecting lines again. And those two intersecting lines will represent the other side of the lid. So if I then take my little pencil, draw a little blue line there, okay, or blue mark there, then what I've got, I'll draw it across, is what I believe to be the lid, the corner of the lid. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw this. I know we should be measuring it, but I just wanted to get an idea of what this is about. So we now know that that is the lid and the position in relation to our box that we've just drawn using these lines here. Obviously these look quite ugly sitting there, but if I remove those, if I could, I don't know how to do it fully, but digitally here, but you can see what's happening. And we can continue that same process. I'll do it one more time. Let's say for the bottom of the pot, that corner here and that corner there, the two very, very bottom bits of the pot. What we do know is the pot comes to the bottom, the actual bottom rim of our frame. The bottom of the pot is somewhere at the very bottom here. We know that much, somewhere right at the very bottom, but we don't know how wide it is. So what we're going to do is the same thing again, and we can use the same 2 points. Once you have an object that you're fairly happy with, that becomes your central point for measurement from using this method. So let's say we do it all over again. We take a line, and this time we hold our pencil up from the back of the first line, as always. We go down there, rotate our pencil until it's at that angle. So we twist our wrist around until our pencil is sitting at that angle, bring it across, put the top point to the top point where we started from. Again, I'm going to actually change the color of that. So I'm going to make that red so we can see the difference between these and the other ones. Say, okay, we know it's somewhere there. And we do the same thing again from the second point. So the second point to the corner of our pot. We have our rotator hand there, and then keeping the pencil in that angle, we move our arm across to the other point there, and you can see, sorry, I've taken the wrong line there. Let's get rid of that. Okay, do that again, Sammy. So we want it from that one down through that one, rotate that, or rather carry that across. Sorry, no, I'm messing this up a wee bit here. Apologies. Let's do it again one more time with feeling. Okay, so we're taking from that corner to that corner. Okay, so we rotate our pencil from there to there. Okay, bring that across there to there. A wee bit low actually, but let's run with it. Okay, we've got those 2 points there, and we'll take my little pencil. Where is it? Pencil there, and draw our little line dot there. So we believe that the corner of the pot is somewhere here. Okay, it's not far off. Actually, it is quite close to the bottom. And then we'll say, okay, what about this corner? What about the corner as we see it on the right? So we'll do the same thing one more time. 2D shapes. Okay, we'll take that line, and same thing. We'll start with this point, and we want to find that point. So that's the angle at which we would rotate our hand with our pencil in it, and we bring that over. We bring it to the top point there, and we know that our bottom is somewhere along that line, and we then do exactly the same thing from the second point, the other side of the cardboard box, down to that there. We bring that over, bring that to there, and you can see they're intersecting, and they're intersecting at that point. So I'll just take my pencil and draw a little dot there. And arguably then I could say, okay, let's draw the little curvy bit in there. And we now kind of have the bottom of the teapot. And then I suppose you might even say, okay, well, if we join these things, as I say, apologies, my lines aren't going to be super detailed, super accurate because of the thing. But and then, okay, we have a spout to go in there, but we basically have established a good impression of that pot. So we now have the pot and our cardboard box all in there, and with a bit more measurement, so on. And I'm just going to do this for the sake of the thing that there. We know that there's a sweep of little spout coming out there of our pot, but I hope, and apologies for all the lines, but I hope that you can see how we're doing that, plotting those different points. And you can do the same with the other points. We know, for example, that the handle of the pot touches that red line. That's one of the outer, that's the furthest most area. So we know that point. And then after that, you can even begin to eyeball it. In other words, make your own judgments. We can judge approximate distances and so on from there on. But that's the difference between judging and guessing and being more scientific or more accurate about it. But you can see what I'm getting there. It's in the ballpark, and we've got something to work with. So I hope that this explanation makes sense. I do apologize because it's quite complicated with regards to all those lines. But the principle basically is, once you know one object, or rather, once you know that you're happy with a couple of points, that you say, yeah, I know that lid's there, I know the other edge lid's there, or it could be any points. It could be, well, I know the top of the pot, 3 handles there. So if you're happy where you've placed 2 points, those 2 points then become the way that you use that triangulation to find other points. And it's just an interesting exercise to do. Whether you use it loads and loads, that's up to you. But the point is, it makes you have to use a method to get measurements, a system that is scientific or whatever, geometric or whatever you want to call it, rather than just saying, oh, it's about there, it's about there. And then maybe running into much more trouble later on in your drawing. Okay. So as I say, hopefully that will be of some use to you. I'm going to just clarify the business of holding your pencil up as well, by the way.